In an effort to celebrate Black History Month, the America East Conference is honoring one African-American alumni from each of its 9 institutions. We sit down with UNH grad Rob Dixon, who talks about the great impact Project Rise has had on the Boston community.
I don't think most folks go into education thinking that's what they want to do. I think it's something that you kind of grow into. I would say the relationships that influenced me were teammates. And I had a couple of coaches, obviously. Ronnie Lane, a guy who actually grew up in Cambridge, was an assistant coach at UNH when I was there. But teammates, I mean, having conversations with teammates, talking about social issues that were relevant to our experience as African American and Hispanic kids coming from the urban communities. And trying to find a way to give back, trying to find a way to make an impact. And I think, those guys, because of their experience and because our conversations, that motivated me more to find a way to do something that was going to have an impact with young people. I would like to say something prophetic, as if I came up with this epiphany and all this kind of fell into place. It's not that complicated. I mean, I was watching my older son, then youngest son, playing a video game, and a friend and I got together and we were talking about the gang violence in Boston. I mean, we had just lost a couple of young kids that we were working with to violence in Boston, shootings, and both were killed. And, we got fed up. Obviously, we were angry. We got depressed. We just tried to figure out the best way we can get something off the ground. And then I just came up with this concept. And initially, it was a boot camp. I mean, what we talked about doing was a boot camp to take kids out of the city, to get them off the streets and, really show them something different. But it just kind of evolved. And by the time we got it operational in the summer of '93, it became a summer program that was more like a day program. I was inspired by the fact that there was so much gang violence. I mean, these kids were experiencing a sense of hopelessness and marginalization that many of them saw no options. They saw no alternatives. They felt that the only thing they could do was get involved in gangs and drugs, and many believed that was the only way out. And again, looking at my personal experience and what I've been able to do, I clearly wanted to get that message to them that there were other opportunities if they were willing to pursue them. And my job, or at least I felt my responsibility, was to show them or expose them to as many of those opportunities as possible. The objective is really to help these kids develop skills that will be able to take them not only to college but through. And we do that, obviously, with a rigorous academic component. We challenge these kids. Many of our kids improved nearly 2 full years in just one summer in math and English. So the work's accelerated, it's challenging. And what's interesting is that a lot of these kids who come to our program have failed math and English. I mean, they're math phobic, they don't like school, they have attitudes, they're disciplinary, behavioral problems, but we don't experience that because our approach is different. A lot of people say it's a family-oriented environment, but at the same time, there are expectations. I mean, I think it starts with setting an example, and that starts with me. The expectations are that we want these kids to perform and excel academically, and we reward them with the other things, the athletics, the afternoon activities, field trips, and so on. But what's been really successful with the program, I think, is the underlying theme is developing self-esteem, helping these kids believe they can be something, helping them believe they can go to college and be successful. And we've sent 182 kids to 4-year colleges from the program, which is remarkable. I'll give you an interesting story. A former player and Project Rise student, Tyrese Gibbs, who actually went to UNH to play basketball there and had a pretty good career there. Well, Tyrese, after he graduated from UNH, called me and said, Dixon, I'm trying to find something to do. I want to work with kids. I want to do something like you did in Project Rise. Obviously, hearing that, I said, well, you need to come back and work in the program. So we brought him back that summer after he graduated. And I just recall he was in the cafeteria one day, and he was sitting at a table with all boys. And I think the oldest may have been 9 or 10 years old. So these are elementary age kids. And they were asking him questions like, hey, Tyrese, what was it like in the cafeteria? He was like, yeah, I can eat all day, as much food as I want. Tyrese, did you have your own room? Yeah, I had my own room. What kind of stereo did you have? But just that dialogue, just that conversation with those kids, I think that meant so much. And with just seeing that, I realized the impact that we were having, and more importantly, Tyrese was having at that moment. But he was inspiring these kids to really look at college as an option. He didn't take out a book. he didn't read anything. He didn't write anything. He just talked to them about his experience as a UNH student and how important it was for him to do well academically, how much success he had athletically, and he talked about combining those things. And you should have seen the energy and enthusiasm in these kids. It was great. I think this idea, hope, that someone falls into these careers, I think that's wishful thinking. And I think, unfortunately, that's where we've been for the past 20 years. And I think right now there's less than 1% African-American males in education, which is ridiculous. I mean, I would say 60, 70% of those folks teaching are females, black and white, and Hispanic. But we're trying to encourage more males because we need more role models, we need more mentors, we need more positive examples, and they don't necessarily have to be athletes. I mean, I think there's this condition or mindset that people would say only athletes can do this because they have that form of connection, that athletic background that allows them to reach kids. I don't agree with that. I mean, I think if you're passionate, if you're committed, and you're genuine, you'll be fine. And I tell my staff that when I'm hiring folks, you know, the kids that we work with in our program may not be able to read in terms of literacy or write, but they read people very well. And they know when you're not genuine, they know when you're not committed to their well-being, or at least encouraging them to do well and having high expectations. To me, those are things that I don't know if you can go to school to learn that. Those are personal attributes that you have to develop, and I think sometimes you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes and experience someone else's life and their circumstances to understand and appreciate that. The overall reality for me was that it certainly brought national and I would say international recognition to the work. I mean, I had calls from Louisiana, Minnesota, Virginia, folks saying, listen, the work you're doing is incredible. How can we get a rise in our area? What can we do to uplift and empower these kids? We've got a 60% dropout rate. Would you be interested in coming to speak? I mean, so all these things kind of brought attention to me, and it kind of put me at the center of everything. As I said, I mean, that's not why I got into this. You know, I mean, I think this is really about Project Rise, the kids that we're working with. I mean, I can have 50 kids come in and sit and tell you their individual stories, and you'd be blown away. And we're talking about kids who, you know, would drink hot tea for breakfast. Didn't have breakfast. Hot tea was just hot water. You know, their version of hot tea was just drinking hot water for breakfast. I mean, and now they're working in finance, or they're administrators in education. You know, I mean, these are stories that most people would, you know, be amazed at, but that's Project Rise. You know, and to me, that's more important than what I do individually, because collectively we've been able to make an impact on these young people's lives, and now they're in a position to do the same.